早晨啊，早晨啊，早晨啊，早晨啊，早晨啊，各位觀眾朋友，真係可以同大家講早晨啊呢一鋪。咁啊，歡迎大家收睇啊，2024年6月28號嘅早上9點鐘嘅美國大選啊，第一輪啊電視辯論。咁啊，呢個係美國時間夜晚9點鐘嚟嘅，應該係美國時間嘅呢一個美國時間夜晚9點鐘，6月27號係啦。咁啊，我哋咧就依家咧係準備啊，全程去直擊呢一個盛事嘅，都係聲音畫面有冇問題？係啦，因為熄咗音樂。早晨啊，早晨啊，查斯切斯達，早晨啊，呢個 PVN， 早晨啊，傻西瓜，早晨 Jason。咁啊，呢度順帶一提呢，仲有4分鐘呢，電視辯論呢就開始啦。聲音畫面有冇問題？有問題的話呢，記得同我講聲嚇。咁啊，可以開住一啲畫面俾大家睇先的。等我一陣啊，揾翻個畫面出嚟先。好，搞掂。咁啊，嗱 ，OK， 我哋見到2位選手入場啦。我開翻啲聲俾自己睇先。No problem，no problem。係啦，大家聽唔聽到個開出嚟嗰一個畫面嘅聲啊？大家應該係 OK， 依家見到佢哋2位仁兄已經各就位。
In 47 months, I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe.
Feels like an upside-down lifetime. Back when the coronavirus pandemic was raging.
係啦，會唔會搭聲？
You have to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it.
係啊，搶 CNN 觀眾發聲冇問題。
In the Biden-Trump sequel, an entirely new fight.
嗱，我而家咧開埋部電腦個聲，咁啊，如果電腦聲有問題咧，即係如果同我，即係或者同個 Chrome 搭聲，或者係同我搭聲嘅話咧，我可以改翻用耳機嘅，係啦。咁啊，呢一度咧，同大家喺一個仲有2分幾鐘咧，同大家科普一下先。咁啊，第一啦，依家咧佢哋平均民調咧，拜登同特朗普咧都係各佔差唔多50%左右嘅。咁但係特朗普咧暫時領先1% 左右。咁啊，另外一方面咧，喺呢一次嘅大選，呢個第一次嘅總統辯論啦，咁啊前後會有90分鐘嘅，所有題目咧都係預先保密。咁啊，由個主持提問啦，咁啊而喺辯論嘅過程咧，一方出發聲嘅時候咧，另外一方支咪會被瞄嘅。咁啊，即係上一次嘅總統大選辯論咧，大家見到嘅嗰一啲，即係大家搶住大家嗰啲發聲啊，拜登叫啊特朗普收聲啊嗰一啲場面咧，就應該係唔會發生嘅啦。咁啊，另外提點翻大家啦，咁啊。陣間嘅嗰個辯論裏邊咧，by the way，聲音畫面如果邊個大聲啲，邊個細聲啲嘅話，記得同翻我講，係啦，我即刻去搞一搞。咁啊，講翻呢個總統大選嘅辯論先。咁啊，第2次會喺9月嘅。而呢次嘅總統大選辯論呢，大家有一個心理準備先。咁就係拜登呢，佢會針對住特朗普佢嘅犯罪行為去攻擊嘅，因為呢，就住呢一個美國大選嘅電視辯論呢，咁大拜登呢，其實佢一早已經係做咗好多嘅電視廣告宣傳㗎啦。咁啊，主要都係話你係想將個國家交俾一個犯罪者啊，一個罪犯啊，定係交俾一個能夠保護你家庭嘅人呢？即係佢啦。咁但係香港人又或者亞洲地區嘅人就比較了解啦，即係如果你想保護你嘅小朋友嘅話，就千祈唔好俾拜登選上去啦。咁啊，而另外一方面呢，我覺得呢，特朗普攻擊佢嘅呢，好大機會都係攻擊住佢嘅年紀啦，或者係佢一啲比較敏感嘅議題嘅，包括可能係即係作為保守派嘅特朗普會追住佢墮胎嘅議題去講啦。咁啊，有機會又話移民嘅問題啦，係啦。喂，by the way。係早晨啊，早晨啊，各位觀眾朋友。 聲音畫面有問題，記得同翻我講，係啦，我盡量去調節一下，係啦。仲有30秒啊，佢哋咧就要正式開始啦。係啊，如果大家見到呢度隻滑鼠，我移開佢先。哇，好緊張啊！我都這是呢個辯論嘅直播嗎？是啊，係啊，獵人入咗罪啊！你會選The Big Guy做總統嘛？呢個呢亦都係總統大選辯論之前嘅預測啦，認為咧特朗普會追擊呢個 Hunter Biden 嘅嗰個罪行嘅。好，嚟啦，好緊張啊，好緊張啊！
We're live from Georgia, a key battleground
Good morning,
state in the race for the White House. In just moments, the current U.S. president will debate the former U.S. president as their party's presumptive nominees. A first in American history. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world to our studios in Atlanta. This is the CNN presidential debate.
This debate is being produced by CNN and is coming to you live on CNN, CNN International, CNN.com, CNN Max, and CNN Espanol. This is a
有冇好翻啲？係啦 ，debate 聲有啲大，我較細翻聲少少。
In their rematch for the nation's highest office, each will make his case to the American people with just over 4 months.
咁啊，呢度咧亦都講翻啦，即係佢哋係有規矩嘅，即係佢哋唔俾帶碌屎入去啦。咁啊，亦都係唔俾咧係預先咧有任何啲咩資料片啊嗰啲入去嘅。係聽不懂英文唔緊要，天命會用佢剩翻嘅英語聆聽能力嚟幫大家去睇。呢一個總統大選嘅辯論，黐線，我係黐線。
When it's time for a candidate to speak, his microphone will be turned on, and his opponent's microphone will be turned off.
嗱，而家講緊啲規矩啦，亦都有講啦，一邊發言嘅時候咧，另外一邊支咪係會俾人瞄嘅，即係俾人靜音嘅。依家把聲會清晰啲。好啦，感謝 Kava 嘅意見。可唔可以入尿片入場？嗱，我哋陣間就睇下呢個拜登嘅下半身有冇腫脹。如果有腫脹嘅話咧，哇！拜登老態龍鍾咁樣出場啦。嗱，睇唔出有冇入尿片，係啦。哇！拜登係會瘋狂俾特朗普攻擊佢嘅年紀問題喎，一定係。哇！特朗普啊入場啦，佢都雖然咧特朗普年紀都大，但係呢一個老態其實都真係不遑多讓，因為其實佢哋差2-3歲嘅啫。
Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern: the economy.
好，
President Biden,
第一題問經濟。
but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
嗱，第一題問呢一個通脹。
Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had
嗱，拜登針對住特朗普任內咧，就話佢經濟崩壞啊，啲人咧冇晒工作添啊。
15,000 new jobs. We brought out the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come from a household where the kitchen table things weren't able to be met during the month. It was a problem. The price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination of what was left of the corporate greed is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for an insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year. And the situation is and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID, and when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates. That was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce-back jobs, a bounce-back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world, he's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks that we have the greatest economy in the world. And, you know,
哇，拜登真係搞唔掂啦！
we pride ourselves in a
如果
situation
拜登係吸咗嘢嘅話，佢應該食咗安眠藥喎。
He rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant.
拜登幾時現形？我覺得拜登已經現緊形啦，佢而家係好眼瞓啊，同埋開始掠嚟㗎啦。其實佢已經。
President, we still found ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
You want to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cause countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce-back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt, while so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only we're there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done. We've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country. And I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt in the 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with...
Biden 藥效要過啦。
Look, if we finally beat Medicare...
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Biden did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence, and it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people, they cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Oh,
Thank
my
you,
God.
President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However,
呢個而家應該係講呢個墮胎問題啦，開始。
in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion bill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. Everybody wanted it back, religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
Biden 好呆。
The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not.
嗱，頭先特朗普嗰度有少少唔係太認同嘅，關於墮胎嘅嗰個講法，因為咧佢係有講啦，有啲州份咧係去到8月、9月，甚至個 BB 出世咧都願意去做呢個墮胎嘅。咁應該係呢個應該係佢攞嚟打呢個墮胎議題嘅啫，但係就。 係咪真係有發生呢啲事呢？咁應該係冇咁誇張嘅。不過作為保守派嘅支持者，作為共和黨人呢，咁佢支持呢一個禁止墮胎呢樣嘢呢，係好正常嘅。By the way， 哇，聽拜登講嘢真係好辛苦。
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world.
特朗普再將個重心擺去移民嗰度，講呢個拜登俾好多移民入嚟美國度犯法，傷害美國嘅女士。 係啊，哇！拜登講嘢真係好辛苦啊，聽到好辛苦。
Including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't, but they would have. Everybody wanted it brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states. I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I support Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. First time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor. Between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
拜登話個墮胎嘅邊界係第一啦，佢要考慮三部曲啦。第一就係個女士同個醫生啦，第二就係個醫生同埋佢醫生考慮個極端狀況啦，第三佢諗唔到啊，佢輕機啊，佢就話就要靠啲州份自己嘅女人傾啦。
You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do, in fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch.
兩邊對於墮胎嘅議題都有一啲，即係當然拜登佢係已經係佢去到一個位，佢 hold run 唔到自己嘅大腦啦。咁但係特朗普佢講關於墮胎，去到8、9月，甚至生咗小朋友出嚟之後再墮胎，呢個例子有少少好難打，好唔實正啊。
You had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. Significantly, by the way, the Border Patrol endorsed me, endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. It's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more border patrol and more asylum officers.
哇！佢係將個移民危機係達到一撇屎咁喎，拜登係。
Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now, all terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere. All over the world, they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation, because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in caravans.
嗱，特朗普有講到咧，喺拜登任內咧，罪犯、精神有問題嘅人同埋呢一個恐怖分子咧，係大批大批咁湧入美國嘅。
Al-Qaeda person come in his administration, kill 3 American soldiers. Kill 3 American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorist ever got through, but the idea they're emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people. That's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating, he's lying.
President Trump, standing on top of you said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just one second.
CNN 個主持問啲特朗普啲問題真係兇狠一啲嘅。
Al-Baghdadi and Soleimani.
因為佢啱啱個問題就係問，喂，特朗普你上任，你會唔會將一啲連而家工作緊安分守己嗰啲移民都掟佢哋去離開美國㗎
？Hundreds of thousands of people dying and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union, because we don't have borders anymore. Every state is now a border. And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these three incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and he just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And we have to get a lot of these people out, and we have to get them out fast because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all. And he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse.
特朗普佢係好強調咧，係真係要將啲無證嘅移民，即係非法移民，係趕離開美國去保護美國居民。
All of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest.
咁亦都有講到啦，佢做好多呢一個移民嘅設施咧，係保護緊美國，咁但係都係俾拜登係取消晒。所以咧，拜登係間接殺害緊嗰啲咧，因為佢寬鬆嘅移民政策而導致死亡嘅嗰啲人。
Veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War II cemetery, World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
Wow.
President Trump?
已經開始去到人身攻擊嘅地步。
That was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taken better care. I'm so glad this came up, and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter.
Oh.
It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
Wow.
4-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said
特朗普開始攻擊拜登個仔 Hunter Biden 啊。
And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy. I want to begin with Russia's war against
好
Ukraine,
嗱，下一步就
which is
而
now
家
in
去
its
傾呢個
third
俄
year.
烏戰爭啦。
Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned, and so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind, too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take my... This was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
咁啊，特朗普又講到咧，佢係唔贊同拜登嘅和火協議嘅停火協議嘅。咁亦都指責喺拜登任內咧係導致，甚至佢認為拜登係咁間接鼓勵緊普京去攻打烏克蘭。亦都因為咁死咗好多人，係因為拜登嘅無能啦，咁令到好多戰爭爆發。咁啊，亦都有講到咧，佢任內係冇恐怖襲擊發生嘅，成個世界係因為拜登做得唔好，所以搞到係好差。
If you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never
come back
said
to you
that.
For 1 minute. I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it.
就話咧，俄烏戰爭其實從頭到尾都唔應該發生嘅。而家咧，美國亦都用到好多錢啦。
And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then do you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you have to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away. By the way, all that money we give Ukraine and from weapons we make here in the United States, we give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East.
What?
In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden,
係啦，而家講呢個以巴戰爭，頭先嘅俄烏戰爭其實都有啲補充嘅，但係佢哋冇停過，所以我冇時間一路聽一路翻譯，唔好意思。
To get Hamas and Israel to end the war, you have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council, straight through the G7, to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're finding that the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so there are 2 different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent $100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any, they were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting you got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
拜登竟然喺度話係哈馬斯想繼續個戰爭，唔係咯，係而家係以色列想咯。
The idea that we have our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question, would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time. And they said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and square.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to
anybody.
呢個係講緊呢個國會山莊騷動。And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news from 2 days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, but she's saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this. Because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor in writing, by the way, the mayor, in writing, turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see. I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it, too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
嗱，啱啱咧，特朗普有提到咧，國會山莊騷動咧，即係2021年1月6號嘅國會山莊騷動，講指責特朗普嘅支持者啦。咁佢咧其實係有提到咧，當日會有好多人嚟，咁啊要求咧呢個國民警衛軍同埋呢個國會嘅警衛咧去保護嘅。咁但係佩洛西咧，佢就趕走晒嗰啲國民警衛軍同埋國會嘅警衛，所以先至會由於到咁樣，然之後佢哋將所有責任歸咎喺呢一個特朗普身上。
I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court, and they said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He didn't do a damn thing, and these people should be in jail, and they should be the ones who are being held accountable. And he wants to let them all out, and now he says if he loses again, such a whiner that he is, that there could be a bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people.
特朗普啊，拜登你要為自己感到羞恥啊
！Many other cities, you go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of they took over big chunks of Seattle. I was all set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that. They saw them coming, and they left immediately. What he said about this whole subject is so off. Peacefully patriotic. One other thing. The Unselect Committee, which is basically two horrible Republicans that are all gone now, out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, turned over desks, turned them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots, come on. When I asked him those first two debates we had, the debates we had first time around, I said, will you denounce the Proud Boys? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by. The idea he's refusing to, will you denounce these guys? Will you denounce the people we're talking about now? Will you denounce the people who attacked that Capitol? What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor, otherwise you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with the son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything
哇！真係好狗屎呢！頭先佢又唔俾特朗普回應，依家佢又俾1分鐘拜登去回應翻。
It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number 3, the crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number 1. Number 2, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office.
呢一個依家係講緊呢一個特朗普呢一個妓女暗口費案。咁特朗普強調佢係冇同嗰個色情女星係有發生過關係嘅。
He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up, way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road coming around. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution?
真係有種感覺 CNN 佢問拜登啲問題係俾佢發揮，但係佢問特朗普啲問題係用嚟刁難佢嘅。因為依家問緊嘅就係拜登覺唔覺得，即係如果美國人投票俾特朗普係破壞緊美國嘅民主？
when back in Germany, and the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him. They said, "What do you think of those people? The people the ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones," he said, "I think they're fine people on both sides." What American president would ever say? Nazis coming out of fields carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas, were fine people. This is the guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense of American democracy.
President Trump.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on that story. He just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden?
And debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the idea that somehow that's the only reason I ran. I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
哇，其實咧頭先問咗好多問題咧，我覺得都係可能因為個篇幅同時間短得滯咧，佢哋係冇一個好，佢哋冇得好好咁發揮，係啦。我較細聲啲呢一個先，係我較細聲啲個 Chrome 先。咁啊，呢一個佢哋由於佢哋冇得好好咁發揮咧，咁所以其實佢哋每一條題目咧都好似唔係講咗好多嘢咁樣。咁但係頭先咧一提到呢一個 Hunter Biden 咧，其實就好明顯拜登係慌張嘅，同埋拜登係由一開始咧個狀態已經好差。你問我咧，我覺得佢係已經輸咗㗎啦，即係拜登，因為咧。其中一個我諗美國人啦 ，OK， 佢哋最關心嘅議題係即係拜登佢呢個年紀有冇能力升任嗰一個美國總統嘅呢一個職位，因為即係講真，美國總統呢個職位都好需要一個強而有力嘅人去 handle 嘅，係啦，咁就。其一啦，咁啊其二咧就係咁啊今次亦都好明顯見到咧，就算特朗普係有老態嘅，你問我，即係佢係咪即係叫做個狀態真係 keep 得咁好咧？咁啊其實真係唔係嘅，咁但係佢個樣有變差咗啫，咁但係佢個語言嘅表達能力咧，仍然係非常非常之優秀。咁啊，亦都見到咧，佢針住呢一個拜登去打呢一個 Hunter Biden 嗰啲嘢啦，同埋咧佢喺一個任內咧呢一個經濟啦，仲有呢個移民嘅問題做得好差啦。呢一個無論係以巴嘅戰爭還是係俄烏嘅戰爭，其實咧佢都做得好差啦。因為咧特別係我認為咧，其實我諗大家即係聽得天命嘅直播多咧都知㗎啦。其實咧 俄烏戰爭可以唔使發生噶嘛？如果當日佢一早就駐兵咗落去，咁啊俄羅斯係唔夠膽打烏克蘭嘅。咁但係佢俾佢發生啦，然之後俾使咗好多錢啦，然之後拜登仲要狡辯咧，我哋係支援武器唔係支援錢，嗰啲武器咧都係美國生產嘅，咁所以咧我哋咧就好好啦，咁樣就唔會即係肥水都不流外人田啊咁樣。咁但係呢樣嘢係建基，即係你喺呢個 moment 攞個美彩係冇用噶嘛。特朗普都話啦，喺俄烏戰爭度有無數咁多嘅人係死於呢一種愚蠢嘅死法，人係唔應該咁樣死嘅。OK， 咁但係拜登係完全無能為力㗎咯。就同埋佢頭先講一樣嘢，我唔知自己有冇聽錯，我聽到係老爆嘅。佢話以巴嘅戰爭係哈馬斯想繼續打落去。我心諗明明係以色列想打落去嘅喎，哈馬斯係咁嗌和談喎，係咁話要交換人質嘅喎，點解你會？即係點解會喺佢個世界裏邊係反而係哈馬斯想繼續打落去，唔係以色列想打落去咧？我完全唔明拜登想表達啲乜嘢。我覺得咧，拜登佢已經係個藥效過啊，可能亦都好似阿蕭若元話齋，佢真係要入尿片啦，我唔知啦。咁但係好明顯見到佢狀態好差，而我哋先撇除佢哋個辯論內容係誰對誰錯先，因為咧，我覺得咧，即係特別係佢哋今次呢個辯論咧，係禁止佢哋帶任何碌屎入去，要佢哋現場用紙筆默言咧去作低對方嘅論點。咁所以好多數據上嘅嘢咧，呢兩個老人家咧未必記得好清楚嘅。咁所以咧喺打呢一樣嘢嘅即係喺打一啲論述戰嘅過程咧，特朗普未必有一個優勢喺度嘅。係啦，好翻嚟咧呢一個。總統大選辯論啦。
And black Americans are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white Americans. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
They acknowledge they made a lot of progress, number one. The fact of the matter is there's more small black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two, the wages of black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're providing housing for black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses.
而家係講緊呢個黑人社區嘅投票人㗎，就對於啲拜登好失望，就認為咧佢咧係冇處理好咧呢一個黑人嘅問題。哇！但係拜登太細聲，聽到有啲辛苦。
Child care costs, cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for child care costs. We got to make sure because when you provide those child care protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any black family, first-time home buyer, should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home.
拜登咧將呢一個黑人社區嘅進步過程咧，令到黑人投票人員感到失望嘅呢一件事咧，歸咎喺呢一個通脹上面。咁亦都咧講咗好多空頭支票咧，講佢有幾點樣幫呢個黑人嘅。係啊，拜登好似冇晒電咁啊。
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right. It's been very bad.
特朗普一嚟就係
He
話
caused the inflation, and it's killing black families and Hispanic families.
通脹嘅原因就係因為拜登。
It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food, where it's doubled, and tripled, and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it.
拜登話：我將個國家交俾你嘅時候，佢係完美嘅。唔係特朗普話將個國家交俾拜登嘅時候，個國家係完美嘅。你睇下而家咁。
fact is that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back. 50% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands and millions of jobs for individuals who are in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, if the ACA has increased, I made sure that there are $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again. And they're going to try again if they win. We find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing any, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge.
嗱，頭先咧，拜登有提到咧，特朗普係想廢除呢一個 ACA， 即係喺美國咧係一個平價醫療法案，應該就係奧巴馬推動嘅嗰個奧巴馬改革嘅醫療改革嚟嘅。
Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group. And what he's done to the black population is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job, great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary are blacks. And that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best numbers. He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But when do you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet? It's a disaster.
You 38 seconds left, President Trump. Will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea that anything he said is true. I've passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. We find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just don't have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing with the environment. He, out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord, I immediately joined it, because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants to undo all that I've done.
the Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones. It was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it. And it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
The idea is that we, in fact, we were the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything if we're not able to, the United States can't get its under control? One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half.
哇，好辛苦啊！聽拜登講嘢。
progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps for thousands of young people will learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements of cause of pollution. But the idea that he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
so every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time of the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I'm proposing that everybody.
By the way,
the millionaires pay 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent. But the biggest thing we'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare, both times. And and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that I believe supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is, we're in a situation where we talk about education for black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants by another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get
哇！好彩以前 A level
tuition.
嗰啲人讀嘢唔會好似讀到好似拜登咁啫。
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face.
拜登話：我未曾唔係特朗普話未曾見過有個人好似拜登一樣咁樣講大話。
Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation.
係咁樣，而家追住拜登嚟講，話佢講大話同埋誤導人。
It's a disgrace. But Social Security, He's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country, and they're putting them onto Social Security, they're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid, they're putting them in our hospitals.
拜登講嘅嘢幾有道理㗎，就係講咧，唔係特朗普講嘅嘢幾有道理㗎，即係講緊拜登咧係佢任內佢整彎咗呢一個社會嘅保障系統，就係因為佢掟咗好多呢一個移民落去。特朗普講嘢係真係犀利。
By the way, when I said suckers and losers, he said he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one who's acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world, the reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
係啊，個主持問咧，特朗普如果你真係再做總統，你哋會做多啲乜嘢去照顧小朋友咧？
The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put him there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border, that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He is the worst in history by far.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We're the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We have the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody. Number one. Number two,
特朗普指責拜登係呢一個美國史上最差嘅總統啊！
I wasn't joking. Look it up. Go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who was the worst president in American history, one through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did for virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work. And we should encourage businesses to to have.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable. If you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand.
要照顧小朋友。
We have polling. We have
拜登
other
話
things
要增加
that
小朋
they
友
rate
嗰啲
because
tax
what he's
credit，
done
即係
is
有
so
小
bad.
朋友
And they
嗰
rate
啲家
me,
庭嘅
I'll
免
show
稅
you, I
額。
will show you. And they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the 2 of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd see politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing money back into our country. The worst president in history by far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, the fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about. He's increased the tariff. He will increase the taxes on middle class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming in the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more, because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that we're importing. Number 2, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he somehow helped the middle class. The middle class has been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number 1. Number 2, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, President Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs, because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't, because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
但係特朗普冇答到呢個問題。講緊呢個生態嚟。
What are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot. And we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low, because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways. But the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him, because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it cost a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues and said, don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically. No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now, struggling to get
because this does pertain to it. He ended Remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say it's a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter, I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said by literally as soon as I win the election, I will have that reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago. But Putin's probably asking for billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where we paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized as being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought an awful lot of people, the whole idea of computer chips. We used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs, they call them, to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans all over from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us, all of our allies, and those who he coddles up to, from Kim Jong-un, he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, you know, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was
特朗普轉鳩佢，哇！你佢呢個年紀拜登打唔打到高爾夫球都成問題啦。
years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they'd never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what anyway, just take a look at what he says he is and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6.
拜登話願意同佢啊嚟場賽車，嚟一嚟咯。
Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap. Yeah. 8. But I had, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to
21
Let's not act like children.
You are
a
a child.
specific concern that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable?
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made, in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear.
今日唔會再發生咧類似呢個國會山莊嘅騷動嗰啲嘢嘅。
And I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been.
特朗普就話：我其實都想拜登係一個好總統啊，我要享受人生，我唔使喺度。
Because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation
依家咧，美國係一個墮落緊嘅國家，所以咧，我要走出嚟啊，令到美國更變得偉大。
Insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un
特朗普話咧，多得呢個拜登咧，我哋係距離呢個第三次世界大戰啊，無限接近啊。
And he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III? Let him follow and win, and let Putin say, "Do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want." There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all, a required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we're a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
咁但係呢個又真係冇得好講喎，係真係拜登任內真係出現好多我哋意想唔到嘅戰爭啊。
Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it.
特朗普話咧喺呢個奧巴馬同埋呢個拜登任內咧，俄羅斯攞咗好多土地嘅，但喺我任內咧，俄羅斯乜都得唔到。
That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia. Because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were
President Trump,
president.
the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much
特朗普話：如
rather
果
accepted these.
大選係
The fraud and
好
everything
嘅，
else
係
was
公平嘅話，
ridiculous.
佢絕對會
And if
接
you
受
want,
個
we'll
大
have a
選嘅
news
選舉。
conference on it in a week. Or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else, in a nice location someplace. And again, no indictments, no political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level, because the people understand it.
Let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea if you lose again, you accepting anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate, live from Georgia.
其實咧，特朗普咧係真係有需要周住拜登咧，佢嗰啲即係嗰啲即係幾個都幾大嘅外交議題嘅。咁啊，第一咧就係俄烏戰爭啦。咁啊，第二咧就係阿富汗撤軍啦。咁啊，第三咧就係呢一個以巴嘅戰爭嘅。咁但係就拜登咧，似乎就好識得咧，即係拜登，我覺得佢最犀利嘅地方咧，其實都唔係佢最犀利嘅地方啊。呢個係一直以嚟佢都好強嘅一個地方啦，就係佢係好識得擘大眼講大話嘅。係啦，如果大家有留意到咧，頭先拜登嘅講法咧，即係無論係佢對於黑人嘅社群啦，還是係個呢一個全世界嘅呢一個通脹問題啦，定還是係咧呢一個以巴嘅戰爭啊、俄烏嘅戰爭啊，呢個啱啱仲講埋，如果大家有聽到呢個佢帶埋金正恩出嚟講添，咁啊好多唔同嘅議題咧，其實佢都係非常之大嘅謊言嚟嘅。咁我奈何咧，特朗普好似唔係好識得追住呢啲嚟打，不過都唔緊要，即係，但係咧啱啱有講到個年齡問題嘅時候咧，就好突出得到特朗普嘅優勢啦。咁啊，特朗普咧真係即係人老精啊，鬼老靈啊。咁但係拜登咧係見到佢老態龍鍾嘅，講嘢都講唔清嘅，真係唔知佢噏乜春嘅有啲地方。我諗係佢自己講咗大話，自己都未必知嘅，直頭係。係啊，拜登任內全世界陷入一個好大嘅混亂嘅，其實係。所以啱啱特朗普講喺拜登任內呢個世界係無限接近第三次世界大戰，係堅嘅，係堅嘅。喂，大佬，我哋點諗到我哋有生之年會見到，即係以色列同巴勒斯坦，佢而家佢哋起衝突啊，成日都有噶啦。咁但係以色列而家係要滅國喎。喂，俄羅斯都係要滅咗烏克蘭喎，仲要未計東南亞，即係例如緬甸內戰啊，跟住當然中國又有影子啦，跟住仲有北韓資助呢一個俄羅斯打烏克蘭啊，仲要全世界超級大亂，其實都真係同呢個拜登嘅軟弱無能係有一個非常之密切嘅關係。所以就 你問我呢，即係都係嗰一句啦，我係好堅持個睇法。無論佢哋今次總統大選辯論，佢哋講嘅議題係講啲乜嘢。咁首先呢，其實個辯論係好冇意思嘅，因為第一啦，就係好明顯見到 CNN 嘅嗰一個操作呢，佢係針對住特朗普，然之後啲問題係俾拜登發揮，但係拜登都係發揮得好差。咁但係第二樣嘢呢，就係辯論就輸㗎啦，所以呢，我係好明白呢點解拜登嘅團隊呢要求要將第一場嘅總統辯論係擺喺依家舉行啦，即係6月尾啦，跟住第二場嘅總統辯論呢係擺喺呢一個9月嘅，因為佢有時間去挽救翻啊。
President Trump in his last term. We found ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience, or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody making under $400,000 had a single penny increasing their taxes, and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit, number one. He's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America. What I did, when, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare for the ability to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along. It's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care. We're going to significantly increase the credits that people have for child care. I'm going to make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health problems for people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like. Even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space-age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get when you're terminally ill. Now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible. Choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President Trump.
哇，真係好大分別。
Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
好，咁要完結啦呢個第一回合嘅美國總統大選辯論。好啦，非常之感謝一個特朗普同埋拜登，特別係拜登嘅精彩演出，都真係奇撚怪怪拜登，喂大佬真係。
The president and former president making their way off the CNN debate stage. Looks like Jill Biden, the first lady, has come out. Former President Trump walking off the stage. The first debate of the 2024 campaign and the earliest presidential debate ever now in the books and in front of the voters. Tonight, along with Aaron Burnett, the first word on what those voters might make of it from our political professional.
哇！真係聽到好撚辛苦啊！對於拜登嘅所有嗰啲，即係咯，我都喺度諗緊拜登佢點樣企咁多個鐘呢？即係佢真係有機會企下賴屎噶嘛，大佬。咁但係亦都好明顯見到佢藥效過嘅，係啦，我整走咗呢個先，係啦。咁即係好明顯見到阿拜登藥效過咗之後呢，係真係個人係好撚唔醒神嘅。咁第一場嘅美國大選總統辯論就嚟到呢度啦。咁講少少，即係我自己嘅睇法啦。咁幾樣嘢啦。第一樣嘢呢就係可以總結一下講咗啲咩。咁其實呢，佢哋個大選辯論呢，由於佢哋係每人呢，基本上都係得2分鐘、2分鐘、2分鐘、2分鐘、2分鐘呢。然之後佢哋每2分鐘呢，即係一係就要回應對方啦，再唔係就係要去答翻呢個 CNN 嘅主持佢問嘅問題呢。所以喺個過程嗰度呢，其實佢好多題目呢，特朗普都必須要呢花更加多時間呢，更加長時間呢去回應翻拜登佢上一個攻擊嘅。咁所以喺呢一個辯論裏邊呢，其實大家都冇乜嘢好發揮。咁但係大家都有 bring out 到一啲問題出嚟嘅，即係例如啦，特朗普對於呢個 child care 啦，即係呢個兒童嘅福利啦，跟住同埋呢一個氣候嘅危機啦，咁佢呢啲問題答得比較差一啲嘅，真係，即係特別係特朗普係一個好出名嘅一個溫室效應嘅，即係認為呢一個係一個袁弓夷喎，好耐冇見喎，係啦，咁就係即係特朗普係好出名，佢係認為溫室效應係唔存在㗎啦，即係溫室效應係唔存在㗎啦，而我覺得呢個呢，其實亦都係一個好好嘅機會俾特朗普去發表佢嘅主張嘅。其中一部分係因為我真心覺得特別係已發展嘅國家，佢哋對於環保當然係有一個好大嘅責任啦，包括中國同美國同埋大部分已發展國家，咁佢哋對於個氣候污染係需要承擔好大責任嘅，但係佢亦都特別係依家美國嘅嗰一個狀態係真係通脹好勁，而美國呢係有一個好有趣嘅講法嘅，唔知堅定流，就係美國嘅油價呢，只要上升到一定嘅水平嘅話呢，成個國家就要玩完㗎啦，成個國家就玩完㗎啦。咁呢一個當然係從一啲美國嘅政治劇睇翻嚟啦，咁我唔知堅定流啦。咁但係其實咧喺呢一個層面咧，特朗普係可以追住拜登去講話，你咁中意去搞環保，去搞掂呢個氣候嘅危機，咁但係你有冇諗過喺而家呢個美國咁水深火熱嘅情況，我哋連自己都顧唔掂嘅時候，我哋點顧掂你全世界呢？係啦，呢樣嘢係有一啲政治學啊、社會學嘅一個技巧喺裏邊嘅，因為咧一個地區咧、一個國家咧，佢個國內嘅情況越嚴重咧，其實越容易帶動嗰一種國族主義啊，即係嗰一種極右法西斯嘅興起咧，其實同呢個國家搞唔掂咧，都係同有一定嘅關係嘅，即係我哋觀察翻歷史嘅軌跡，咁都係嗰一句啦，我覺得咧，拜登咧同埋特朗普咧，今次最大嘅分別咧，唔係佢哋個內容係點，而係佢哋個表現係點。 你問我咧，佢哋喺個內容上面咧，真係好多地方可以斟酌嘅。即係你問我，其實佢哋答得唔對題嘅，好多嘢都係答得都唔對題。咁但係特朗普嘅言辭仍然非常犀利啦，拜登嘅言辭仍然非常掠利啦。咁所以就聽到非常之辛苦㗎。咁我諗諸多嘅美國人咧，睇到呢一次嘅美國總統大選嘅電視辯論咧，咁都好意識得到年齡真係一個好大嘅問題。而拜登咧係真係自暴其短嘅，特別係佢臨尾嘅嗰一個總結啦，2分鐘嘅總結。佢係掠晒你，佢係講下，佢係覺得突然之間好似唔知自己喺度講緊啲乜嘢咁樣嘅。咁我覺得呢一個就先至係即係對比起喺呢個辯論裏邊，佢哋暫時未知道特朗普嘅副手係邊個嘅，係啦。咁對比起佢喺呢個辯論裏邊，佢哋表達嘅內容有幾貼題，有幾貼近民生，有幾貼近美國選民關注嘅議題。佢哋之間嘅嗰一個表現分野會更加決定美國人嘅嗰一個印象，而美國人嘅嗰個印象對佢個總統大選候選人嘅嗰一個睇法係點樣呢？我覺得基本上係左右咗佢哋會投票俾邊個嘅，因為呢，講到最尾呢，美國嘅體制 OK， 又或者任何嘅選舉工程其實都係 marketing 嘅戰爭，只要做好 marketing 就贏㗎啦，其實。咁所以我係對呢方面，我對特朗普係好有信心，特別係今次拜登嘅表現真係好差，同4年前嘅嗰個總統大選辯論比，佢真係好差，係啦，同埋即係都必須要接受咧，喺拜登任內佢哋嘅施政係做得好差嘅，係啦。咁第一啦就係喺即係我覺得真係唔明白點解可以咁樣嘅。第一啦。一年一度嘅國情咨文咧，拜登基本上喺佢成1個鐘頭嘅國情咨文講話裏邊咧，都係講緊大話嘅。咁第二樣嘢咧就係即係喺拜登任內咧，成個國家嘅通脹係暴升嘅，係啦。咁我諗美國人其實都 feel 到自己身處喺有幾咁水深火熱嘅狀況裏邊。咁所以你問我呢個第一回合嘅美國總統大選辯論，拜登團隊係醒目嘅，佢知道呢，萬一搞禍咗滑鐵盧了，佢仲有時間做公關工程去追翻個支持度。咁但係嚟緊9月第2次總統大選辯論，唔知規矩係點嘅暫時。咁但係如果同樣地係呢一種由主持人去發問，然之後咧，佢哋可能個別有2分鐘時間分別發言的話，好大機會咧，好大機會呢一種嘅辯論形式咧，係佢哋設計出嚟便利拜登添嘅，係啦，即係原諒我用一個好陰謀論嘅角度去睇，因為今次呢個辯論除咗大家好見到拜登老態龍鍾，咁特朗普仍然係好撚精，即係叫做好 sharp 啊！咁但係個主持嘅發問咧，佢嘅問題咧，都係對特朗普係有好強嘅針對性，對拜登咧係有好強嘅好大嘅發揮空間喺度。咁所以下一場辯論係咪都會係特朗普可以做得好好咧？或者拜登今次佢嘅團隊吸收完呢個教訓，會唔會真係全程有個耳機喺個耳仔嗰度教佢講嘢呢？咁真係唔知道啦，係啦。咁依家呢係就有觀眾朋友講起啦，咁我都想上網睇下嘅，因為呢對上幾日呢，早幾日講緊關於呢一個特朗普佢嘅副手嘅講法呢，暫時係未有定論嘅。係啦，咁到最後咧，依家咧有講到啦，特朗普嘅副手咧有幾個啦，包括呢個 Marco Rubio 啦，呢個非常之出名嘅特朗普支持者啦，一個非常優秀年輕嘅政治精英，係啦，跟住仲有呢一個《絕望之歌》嘅呢個作者。J.D. Vance 係啦， 同埋呢個北達科他州嘅州長係啦。咁我自己覺得咧，針對住特朗普佢嗰啲移民問題咧，可能真係 Marco Rubio 係佢最好嘅呢一個副總統候選人嘅嗰一個幫手嚟嘅，係啦。咁但係啱啱有講到啦，北達科他州嘅州長咧，佢係超級有錢嘅，係啦。咁所以佢會唔會因為有錢成為特朗普嘅副手咧？係啦，暫時就未知，係啦，就係咁。咁唔好意思，打咗喊路。針對住特朗普嘅移民問題，我都真係覺得呢個 Marco Rubio 係最好嘅，佢嘅副總統候選人就係咁。咁啊，睇翻呢一啲新聞報導咧，都有講呢，喺呢一個 CNN 嘅總統大選辯論前夕呢，其實係有唔同嘅呢一個媒體公司呢做呢一個民意調查，就調查呢佢哋對於呢一個總統大選嘅關注點會係乜嘢嘅。咁啊，其中一樣嘢呢，就係拜登嘅認知能力，都已經唔係講緊啊佢嘅年紀問題，而係佢嘅認知能力係去到邊度嘅。咁啊，我相信呢，經過呢一次嘅總統大選調查呢，咁大家對呢個拜登嘅認知能力有個新嘅認識啦。就係咁，連左派嘅呢個 CNN chat room 呢，都係投票俾呢一個特朗普嘅人呢係大幅領先嘅。但係我哋又亦都要講另外一樣嘢嘅。台灣總統大選如果淨係講網上嘅即係叫民調嘅話呢，柯文哲係贏晒嘅。係啦，咁就即係我哋亦都要睇翻，即係台灣總統大選呢個前車之鑑，就係真係有分空軍同陸軍，年紀輕同年紀細嘅，係啦。咁好明顯咧，特朗普呢一類咧，即係語言表達能力特別強嘅政治人物咧，佢空軍嘅調動能力係特別強嘅，係啦，佢自己佢嘅 Truth Social 啦，係啦，佢個 Truth Social 啦，係啦，即係佢自己嘅社交平台啦，或者係 Twitter 啦，或者係 Twitter 上一屆即係假使間我哋當上一屆係冇呢一個選舉舞弊嘅話咧，佢喺 Twitter 嘅嗰個支持度咧都遠高於拜登嘅。OK， 咁但係喺呢一個咁嘅情況底下，我哋要考慮翻喎。咁因為傳統嘅老人家嘅美國選民都係好佔大多數噶嘛。咁喺呢個情況底下，我哋要睇翻到底呢次總統大選嘅辯論，拜登嘅嗰個極端差嘅認知能力能唔能夠喐到嗰一班人嘅選票啦？我覺得係喐唔到嘅。因為咧如果大家有睇過咧，我舊 channel 出嗰條片咧，嗰5個關於選舉嘅理論咧，咁小弟寫嘅篇稿係，咁嗰個理論裏邊咧，其實係有講到咧，我哋無論左派定右派咧，民主黨定係共和黨咧，其實佢哋都唔會試圖去喐對方嘅選民嘅，因為佢知道其實唔會喐得到對方嘅支持者㗎。咁佢哋要揀，佢哋要揾啲乜嘢人，攬啲乜嘢人過嚟啊？其實就係中間選民咯，係啦。咁我都好相信，特別係老一輩嘅，即係佢哋打呢個電視廣告戰爭嘅嗰一班老一輩嘅選民咧，其實佢係要投特朗普就會投特朗普，係要投拜登就要投拜登。咁變相拜登同特朗普佢哋呢個選戰要打嘅係乜嘢咧？咁第一啦就係首次投票嘅選民啦。咁第二咧就係唔肯投票嘅選民啦。第三咧就係搖擺賓州啦，係啦。by the way，拜登咧啱啱佢咧喺個辯論裏邊好中意講啦，第一啦、第二啦、第三啦。佢講完第一同第二之後咧，第三咧佢發現自己個腦跟唔上咧，就開始亂鳩咁噏噶啦。黐線嘅拜登真係 咁啊，但係你又唔可以怪佢喎，大佬佢80歲，81未啊？拜登定係82啊？我唔記得咗添。即係拜登嘅年紀真係真係好大噶嘛，即係你咪唔可以怪佢81歲老人家，即係佢表現得差，咁係好正常嘅。佢仲要佢11月生日，跟住就82歲啦。咁所以你又唔可以怪拜登佢表現得差，因為佢真係一個80幾歲嘅老人家。咁但係特朗普後生佢幾歲，個表現又好好多喎，真係，唉。所以真係考慮難講。呢次見到特朗普嘅呢個辯論，咁啊對佢真係好有信心，即係對佢至少佢認知能力，或者下一次或者再下一次嘅嗰個美國大選辯論，就係咁，係啦。咁之後咧，亦都有咧有啲被評論分析咧，呢一次嘅即係因為而家已經有少少評論咧分析咧係講針對翻呢個 CNN 嘅美國大選電視辯論嘅。咁啊有一個分析咧個講法係幾有趣嘅，就係話即係特朗普，你話佢講大話都好 ，OK， 佢呢一個語速，呢一個頭腦嘅清晰程度咧，令到你覺得佢就算講大話都係有理有據。但係咧，拜登咧係令到你覺得你係唔知佢都啱緊乜啊？係啊，咁拜登咧拜登陣營其實已經係作咗個故仔㗎啦。OK， 佢話拜登咧感冒，所以咧佢表現失常，係啦，就係咁。係啦，咁呢一個總統大選辯論前後90分鐘啦，咁亦都有講呢，特朗普發言呢大概38分鐘左右，咁拜登發言呢大概33分鐘左右，咁雙方嘅辯論呢，其實喺個內容都係冇一個好出色嘅地方嘅，都係一啲即係冇乜好強嘅數據或者論據去證明，就或者論證到佢哋個論點啦。咁但係拜登語無倫次咧，而且講嘢時不時咧都係會有好詭異嘅畫面咧。咁個分析指咧，佢呢一啲咁嘅表現咧係絕對令到選民咧係會憂心忡忡嘅，就係咁。係啦，咁有個評論咧講得好衰嘅，就係咧呢兩個老人家嘅辯論，其實要鬥嘅唔係講佢哋點樣去表達好自己，而係點樣去減少出錯。而喺呢一方面咧，特朗普雖然咧係冇做好多值得欣賞嘅地方，但係佢對比起呢個拜登嚟講咧，露出更加少嘅弱點。咁所以咧，大部分嘅評論同分析咧都係講咧，特朗普喺呢一次嘅電視辯論咧係比較出色嘅，相對地就係咁，係啦。選總統當然係以民為先，有能者居之啊，唔關年紀事。我哋好理想化咁睇係啦，但係我哋觀察西方民主國家嘅投票咧，選總統就係選一個自己中意嘅，就係咁。哇！多謝你阿良，其實真係。即係多謝阿良，多謝，哎呀，太多謝阿良你啦，係啊，太多謝高啲阿良，多謝，哎呀，我唔識點樣講添，即係其實朝頭早開直播都冇 expect 過高啲阿良會到嚟，多謝。我仲要爭大家一個新聞報導，我而家都仲未搞掂，我開晒啲網頁，係啦。咁覆翻覆翻呢一位觀眾朋友先。咁最新嘅搖擺賓州調顯示咧，咁喺個亞利桑那州咧，咁特朗普咧係贏拜登12% 啦，喬治亞州咧咁係贏拜登10%嘅，係啦。跟住咧，密西根州咧係贏3% 啦，贏拜登，係啦。威斯康辛州 係贏呢個拜登都係3%，係內華達州都係贏3%。咁暫時幾個搖擺州份咧，其實都係見到特朗普係有優勢嘅。咁啊，補充翻咧頭先一啲辯論嘅內容啦，因為你嗱而家都係上網睇人嗰啲翻譯㗎。咁啊，特朗普咧亦都有指責到啊呢個拜登咧係俾中共收買嘅，係啦。但係拜登咧喺任內咧，從來都冇開除過咧冇能力嘅員工啦。互相佢哋兩個咧都有批評到咧對方咧係史上最差嘅美國總統。咁但係咧佢哋咧亦都有講到咧，即係好好笑啊！特朗普講嘢就話咧嗱，你啊個人拜登你個人啊，你未搞到美國啊，你啊習近平啊、普京啊、金正恩呢啲獨裁者都唔會尊重你啊！係啦，喺你嘅統治底下，全世界啊都陷入呢個第3次世界大戰危機啊！然之後咧，跟住又係啦，跟住拜登咧就話你啊要撤出北約啊，跟住啊唔理我哋嗰啲共同防禦危機啊，先搞到我哋美國啊陷入呢個戰爭危機啊！跟住咧即係特朗普又串鳩翻佢啦，就係話如果我係總統啊，俄羅斯根本唔會攻擊烏克蘭咯。係啦，如果我做總統嘅話，我係會即刻令到呢一啲停火咯。係啦，就係咁。亦都有講到啊，話如果唔係拜登做得咁衰啊，我使鬼而家喺度同佢一齊算咩？我寧願去旅行，我寧願去嘆世界。但係美國人民係對眼係識得明辨是非噶嘛，咁所以我先至會喺度啊。對位都多謝高迪，多謝坦丁，多謝。我唔係早起身啊，我係冇瞓過覺，就係咁，係啦。因為我應該我完咗呢一個直播，我應該就去健身室嗰度去踩呢個樓梯機，然之後再翻嚟做嘢咯。係啦，我應該去健身室做一陣 gym 先，再翻嚟做嘢。我應承咗阿 J 阿專寫篇稿，我都未寫好，係啦。咁啊，今次咧呢一個大選辯論咧，亦都有講到一啲移民嘅危機嘅，講咗好多。咁亦都係針對住拜登佢寬鬆嘅移民政策啦。咁啊，令到呢一個美國有好多有問題嘅人入咗去啦，傷害美國嘅人民啦，搶奪咗佢哋嘅人嘅工作啦，係啦。咁所以就係咁樣咧，我亦都再重申翻咧，我真心覺得 Marco 係嗰個係 Marco 啊嘛 ，Marco Rubio 係佢最好嘅總統副手候選人，因為佢係古巴籍嘅，係古巴裔嘅，佢亦都係移民嚟嘅，亦都精通幾個國家嘅語言嘅，好擅長辯論。咁佢本身呢一個背景咧，其實都好幫得到特朗普手嘅。而且咧，Rubio 其實都相當年輕啦，50零歲。咁啊，萬一咧特朗普喺任內有啲咩冬瓜豆腐咧，佢接任咧，咁相信大家都會覺得呢件事係好好嘅，就係咁。好，咁啊，今次呢一個美國大選嘅首場電視辯論啊，咁啊差不多來到這裏了，係啦。咁嚟緊嘅下一次嘅總統大選辯論咧，應該係9月嘅。咁啊，大家可以預期啦，小弟都係會係同大家直擊現場嘅，係啦。Hispanic 嘅係即係點解啊？我霎時之間唔識點解添。佢唔係古巴裔嘅咩 ？Marco Rubio 死啦！佢唔係古巴裔嘅咩？唔通我記錯咗啊？等我一陣啊 ，Marco Rubio 佢係古巴裔嘅美國政治人物。係共和黨嘅黨員啊，亦都係律師出身嘅。係啦，今年係幾多歲呢？今年係53歲嘅啫。係。咁係啦，好攰啊！ 但係唔緊要嚇，幾攰咧都要去做 gym 嘅。咁啊喺喺古巴地區係即係西班牙咩？西班牙語系嘅咩？古巴係真係不知道啊！古巴係講咩文呀？古巴係喎，古巴係西班牙語系嘅，係啊，古巴係西班牙語系嘅。好啦，咁啊都真係差不多啦。咁啊呢一度再一次即係叫做收睇嘅觀眾朋友啦。咁啊亦都多謝高迪亞良啦，多謝坦丁啦。咁啊頭先見到都仲有幾個到嚟嘅。咁啊多謝 Stupid Guy 係啦，早晨啊係啦，我都到嚟啊，見你肯咁早起身，同埋 Ran 係啦 ，Good 天命，多謝你哋幾位嘅到嚟啦。咁啊亦都多謝咧各位觀眾朋友睇到最後嘅，係啦。咁啊關於美國大選呢，咁啊小弟嘅時事週報會 keep 住同大家跟進啦。咁啊嚟緊9月嘅第2次美國總統大選電視辯論呢，大家都能夠預期啊，我係會同大家一齊全程直擊嘅。咁但係亦都鑑於咧小弟英語能力比較薄弱，可能下一次呢要揾人幫手，就係咁。非常之感謝各位觀眾朋友睇到最後，我哋下一次嘅呢一個直播或者影片再同大家見面啦。拜拜，多謝各位觀眾朋友支持，拜拜。